There's a mix of snow and rain falling from the sky. I'm so confused. But all of that aside, we're talking about a book today. We're talking about this book. The Body Keeps Score, Mind, Brain, and the Body in the Transformation of Trauma. Trauma? Bessel van der Kolk. This is my first book by the author. So I heard about it for so many people, but I never actually picked it up. And when I finally did, I was like, okay, I should have picked it up way like a long time ago, because it was possibly the best book I read in 2020, if I am talking about like what I got from it, as you know, like I put this much time into reading this book, what did I actually get from it? Obviously there were books that I maybe found more entertaining or more insightful or more this or that, but in terms of like overall time equated to value, I thought this was probably the best read. Why? Because I was blown away, because there's so many things that, you know, like maybe people who study neurology, I don't know, maybe it's neurology, maybe people who are into all of that study these things on a regular, but I'm not very well versed in that area. I am very interested in psychology, but this goes a little bit more into the technical side, which I really liked. I feel like I knew so many things from a surface level that I got to know a little bit more through this book. I had to go back to the book and read a few things before filming this video, because I feel like I should have recorded it like back when I first read it. So I had to kind of re-jog my memory, but I will read a couple of things out to you. But overall, if there's one book I want you guys to read this year, I would say please read this book. But be careful, because if you are in a sensitive position at the moment, mentally, I mean I was, but then I feel like it's so helpful, but at the same time very difficult to get through, especially if you're dealing with things in your personal life. But I would still recommend it. I would still say give it a try and see how you feel. You don't need to go through it in one sitting. You can come back to it in a couple of years if you don't want to read it entirely, but at least give it a start. Now, what is this book about? If you look at it, just if you kind of like start reading it, you think about it's talking about people who deal with trauma, who have been traumatized, and obviously things with people going to war and then coming back and how they live with themselves, but different kinds of trauma. So from domestic abuse, from child abuse, from all types of things. And at the end of the day, I thought, you know, okay, fine, I know these things, maybe it'll just be an interesting outlook on it. But no, it was actually going very deep into what exactly are the physiological changes that take place in your body when you experience trauma. So how everything that happens in your body is like kind of everything that happens in your life kind of builds up within you, and your body keeps the score, which is what the book says. The body keeps the score. So sometimes things happen in our life and we kind of just look past it, or we kind of go on, life goes on and everybody moves on. It has become more apparent now than it has ever before that things happen. People to a certain extent have got desensitized, or people to a certain extent don't have the privilege or the time or the privilege of having the chance to even deal with things or process things, because you have to get on with life if you want to survive. And that's how modern world feels like. This is what life today feels like. But even if we are not keeping a mental note of everything that is happening in our life, our body is, and it is going through so much that we are unaware of. So that was what kind of the premise of the book was. There were a couple of things that were super interesting. The first one is when he talked about how traumatized people have a tendency to superimpose their trauma on everything around them, and they have trouble deciphering whatever is going on around them. So a lot of it talks about when you experience something traumatic, something weird happens in your brain that can lead to many different outcomes. You might get stuck in that phase of your life, or you might get kind of caught up and never get over that particular thing, but move on with your life and not realize it till a much later date. So even if these things have happened like many years ago or a long time ago, we are still experiencing them if we don't deal with them properly. And a lot of people are unaware of the fact that they're still dealing with the trauma that maybe physically took place many years ago, but mentally they're still reliving it every single moment of their day. Another part that I found really interesting was almost like talking about trauma as if it's a place. I, for the longest time, struggled with empathizing with people who didn't get away from dysfunctional relationships. When someone messages me 20 times like a friend, oh, he's such a dick, I don't like him, he's this, he's that, and then always goes back to that person. I could not sympathize because I'm the kind of person, I'm so suspicious, and that is an issue for me. I am incredibly suspicious of every human being on this planet. I take such a long time to like, you know, just ever give people a chance, or almost never give people a second chance, and that is an issue. And the reason for that is that I have probably had experiences that made me that way, and I can't really pinpoint what it was. But when I see other people just keep giving people a chance all the time, even if they've been hurt by them, I couldn't quite understand. And the book kind of talked about that the mere opportunity to escape does not mean that traumatized people will take that road to freedom. Rather than risk experimenting with new options, they get stuck in the fear that they know. Their flight and fight response have been thought. Traumatized people keep secreting large amounts of stress hormones long after the actual danger has passed. And then there's a bit, and it talks about how the body's stress hormones do not return to baseline after the threat has passed. Scared animals return home regardless of whether home is safe or frightening. And a lot of the parts of the book made me understand other people in my life a lot better, both in a good way and not so good way, because sometimes I realize that there is an apparent reason why some people behave the way they behave or do the things they do, but it also made me realize that some people are not doing things the right way. And both of these realizations were very, very helpful and very, very kind of, I would say, like, gave me perspective and gave me kind of an idea of how I feel about being treated a certain way. There is also a lot of talk about medication and trauma. When I first moved to England, I was actually astonished by how easily you can get your hands on antidepressants, which I think is not a bad thing at all. But I was also very surprised by how many people in the UK are on antidepressants. And that got me to kind of question the fact during my university, because I was looking at a lot of people using legal highs or just turning to drugs, but also being on antidepressants at the same time, made me question whether medication is really truly a part of the process of recovery. And if it is, why are so many people continuously on that medication, and why isn't there, what is the next step from there, what is the road to recovery once you start your medication? And again, that is another thing that the book really went into, about what role medication plays when it comes to recovering from trauma or traumatic experiences. One thing it did talk about when it talked about medication is trauma, or recovering from trauma, is very much being able to take back control of your own body and your own mind. And does medication help you take back that control? Or does it kind of make you more used to not having control? What is exactly the outcome? And I guess it's kind of difficult to answer that. Is medication a part of the healing process? It made me think about what experiencing trauma truly means, and how many people live through trauma while being oblivious to the fact, and only later realizing that what they failed to register mentally crippled them physically. Psychological problems occur when our internal signals don't work, when our maps don't lead us where we need to go, when we are too paralyzed to move, when our actions do not correspond to our needs, and when our relationships break down. For me, this part was really interesting. It talked about how we can get along with other people only if we can accurately gauge their reactions and intentions of being benign or dangerous. Even a slightest misreading can lead to painful misunderstandings in relationships. I think I'm really good. I'm very, very emotionally it's a very strong, how do I say it, like vibe. Like, I get a lot of like vibes from people and I go with that, but sometimes I might be misreading things and not knowing it. I know that my natural response is to always be suspicious of people, and that might be an issue with just me always kind of seeing or like being led down, or being kind of around people who misled me, be that in school with bullies or in relationships that I had earlier in my life where, you know, I thought that someone really cared about me and they didn't. So it might be many different reasons where you are left being constantly vigilant and constantly on the edge about people you meet. And from an outsider's perspective, what I realize is, what I see as a dangerous place for someone, why would you go back to that guy if he's hitting you? Why would you go back to that family if they don't care about you? For someone, that might be their safe place because they have never known anything different. And I think it helped me empathize with a lot of different kind of scenarios and people and things that they're dealing with a lot better. The latter half of the book did get into like how you can help people deal with trauma, and it said that the first step towards helping people deal with trauma is really helping them live fully and securely in the present. So them a sense of security, or a place that feels secure, warm, comfortable. There is nothing volatile about it. One day when you leave this house, it's not going to disappear. One day when you leave this family, it's not going to fall apart. You know, you feel secure in something, and that is really important for people, more so than we understand or think of it to be. Even if something that they thought of as a safe place has no longer been there, creating that safe place for them is really the first step. Because if you don't feel safe where you are at the moment, it's very difficult to go back in the past and deal with something. And sometimes it happens the other way, where you find yourself in a place in life where you suddenly feel like safe and comfortable, and finally you are protected enough, or you feel comfortable enough to revisit the past and process things one at a time, which is why sometimes people only, feel a certain way about something years in the future, and that's not really up to us. The essence of trauma is that it is overwhelming, unbelievable, and unbearable. Each patient demands that we suspend our sense of what is normal and accept that we are dealing with a dual reality. The reality of a relative, secure and predictable present that lives side by side with a ruinous, ever-present past. Which means that, no matter what we're dealing with right now, this is real. Your real life, like what you're living every single day, is real and it's happening. But what happened in the past, it also happened. And they're both equally real and equally true and deserve equal amount of understanding. And you can't just move on. It's too overrated, this whole idea of just move on. Maybe sometimes you need to deal with things because it's so much harder to deal with things. It's so much harder to live on with your life. You don't realize. And I think that's what the book wanted to tell people, that a lot of the times parents abuse their children because they themselves were in abusive relationships or parental relationships when they were young. A lot of the times people bully other people because they themselves have so much trauma that they haven't dealt with, and then they go on to traumatize other people. And that is the biggest issue, because when you just move on, you pass that trauma on to other people without realizing, and that is the most dangerous aspect of it. At the core of recovery is self-awareness. When we pay focused attention to our bodily sensations, we can recognize the ebb and flow of our emotions, and with that, increase our control over them. Learning to observe and tolerate your physical reactions is a prerequisite for safely revisiting the past. If you cannot tolerate what you are feeling right now, opening up the past will only compound the misery and re-traumatize your future. And the very last part that kind of stuck out to me was about being traumatized by the people you love and why that is so dangerous. It knocks out the most important protection against being traumatized, being sheltered by the people you love. If the people you love, whom you naturally turn to for care and protection, terrify you or reject you, you learn to shut down and ignore what you feel. Having a good support network constitutes the single most powerful protection against being traumatized. And that is another thing. When the very people who are meant to take care of you or provide that protective environment for you, if they are the ones who terrify you, it's very hard to be a strong human being who can deal with things. And at some point you are going to need to guide yourself to be like, what I thought was protection and care was not, I need to teach myself how to love, I need to teach myself how to care, I need to teach myself how to feel, and these are valid feelings that people feel. My favorite line, we are a hopeful species. Working with trauma is as much about remembering how we survived as it is about what is broken. And that actually made me kind of really love this book, because towards the end it talks about how strong you have to be as a human being to kind of live through these traumas in the first place and then be able to come back to it and process it. It requires a tremendous amount of strength and courage and patience, and even like the ability to just shut everything out and just be like, I need a moment to just feel and gather my thoughts and understand what's going on in the world around me. And all of those things together just made me feel just kind of overwhelmed. I dropped the book at that point, and then I came back much later to kind of finish it and read the part where he talked about, how do you deal with it and how do you like step by step, think through it. I have so many notes in this book, and I feel like if I go through all of it, I'll just be here forever. If you guys want to read it, and then maybe I could do a live where we could talk about it, that would be fantastic. But overall, incredible book. I'm only saying this because I feel like it can encourage a lot of people to recognize bad patterns in their own lives, or things that are not maybe right. It might help them realize that some things that they were feeling weird about, like there's a legit reason you feel that way about something. And overall, I just feel like anything, any piece of literature or any work that is out there that can be potentially helpful or can help us understand ourselves a little bit better should be shared, and should be kind of, the word should be put out there. So that's all for today. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope it made you want to pick it up and give it a read. But yeah, that's the book. That's all for today. And yeah, let me know if you've read it. If you want to share your thoughts down below, feel free to do so, and I'll see you in the next one.